You know, I, sometimes you hear a story and you're like, wait, that really happened.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Truth is stranger than fiction.
Right, totally. And the story we're diving into today, it's a great example.
Okay, lay it on me.
So picture this. 2008, Monroe, Washington. Bank of America heist. But this isn't your typical bank robbery.
Right. I'm intrigued. What makes it so unique?
The robber shows up in a blue shirt, safety goggles, and a dust mask.
Doesn't exactly scream criminal mastermind.
Right, but that's kind of the point. The seemingly ordinary getup was actually central to the whole plan.
Okay, I'm starting to see where this is going.
The man behind this heist, Anthony Curcio, used that unassuming look to pull off something truly wild.
So let's break it down. How did this all go down?
So the robber, our guy, dressed like he's ready to paint a house or something, pepper sprays the Brinks guard, grabs the cash, and takes off. So far, so good, right?
Yeah. But pretty standard robbery so far.
But here's where things get crazy. The police arrive and find a crowd of guys dressed exactly like the robber.
Whoa, hold on. A whole crowd, like a bunch of clones.
It's almost comical, like a scene out of a movie.
So was this some kind of elaborate gang? Did he have a crew of accomplices all dressed the same?
Not exactly. This is where Curcio's plan gets really clever. He'd posted a fake job ad on Craigslist.
Craigslist. Okay, this is getting interesting. What kind of job ad would lead to this?
The ad called for workers and told them to wear, you guessed it, blue shirts, safety goggles, and dust masks. He basically created this instant decoy army of unsuspecting job seekers.
Wow. So while they're all milling around the parking lot thinking they're about to start some work, Curcio blends right in, pulls off the robbery, and vanishes.
Exactly. And he even had an inner tube stashed in a drainage dish for a quick getaway. This guy was prepared.
That's incredible. I mean, it's audacious, sure, but the level of planning is impressive. From a psychological standpoint, what do you think made people respond to that ad? What made them overlook any potential red flags?
That's what I was thinking, too, is like, how could so many people fall for that? You'd think someone would have noticed something was off.
Right. Well, I think Curcio probably tapped into a few things. First, the promise of easy money, always a draw. Then there's the whole anonymity of a large group.
Like safety in numbers.
Exactly. If everyone's dressed alike and you're just one face in a crowd, it's easier to think, well, someone else would speak up if something was wrong.
And you don't stand out if things go south.
Right. There's that sense of anonymity that might embolden someone to participate even if they had doubts.
So he basically manipulated social dynamics to his advantage.
Brilliantly, it seems. But even the best laid plans, they can unravel, right?
Yeah.
What was it that tripped Curcio up? What led to his downfall?
You won't believe this. It was a homeless man who had seen Curcio scouting the bank a few weeks earlier.
So he recognized him from the robbery.
Yep. And he went to the police with what he knew.
Wow. So a seemingly random detail that could have easily been dismissed turned out to be the key. That's wild. What did the police do with that tip? How did they connect the dots and build a case?
Well, they obviously couldn't just arrest him based on one guy's word.
Right. They needed more than just a tip.
They started following Curcio, but discreetly, of course. Gathered evidence, looked into his background, his finances, standard procedure. It was good old-fashioned detective work.
Piecing together those seemingly unrelated bits of information.
Until they had enough to get a warrant and search his house.
And what did they find?
Oh, they hit the jackpot. They found detailed plans for the heist, receipts for the Craigslist ad, even the clothes he wore that day.
Talk about incriminating evidence. This wasn't just a spur-of-the-moment thing. This was carefully planned and executed. So who was this mastermind criminal? What led him to this point?
That's where the story gets really interesting. This guy, Curcio, he wasn't some hardened career criminal.
Really? He went through all this trouble, and he wasn't even a professional.
Nope. Turns out he was a former high school football star who'd gotten caught in the grip of a gambling addiction. Deeply in debt, too.
So desperation played a role.
Absolutely. It seems like the pressure from his gambling debts, it just pushed him to do something drastic.
I see. Gambling addiction, it can be incredibly powerful and destructive. The thrill of winning, the chasing of losses, it can lead people down a dark path.
So he gets caught red-handed with all this evidence, no way to deny it. What happened next?
Well, facing the reality of the situation, Curcio was arrested and charged with robbery. With all that evidence stacked against him, he ended up pleading guilty.
And what was the sentence?
He was sentenced to 6 years in prison. You might think that's it, right? The end of the story. Desperate gambler, bad choices, prison time, case closed.
Yeah, it does feel like the story's wrapped up there. Justice served and all that.
But that's not quite the whole picture. See, Curcio's story, It takes an unexpected turn. While he was in prison, he didn't just sit around. He actually used that time to reflect and, well, try to change.
Really? Like a genuine change or just a prison pastime?
It's hard to know for sure, but what he did after he got out, it suggests something real. He kept writing and speaking, but he also started working with organizations that help former inmates, get back on their feet.
So he robbed a bank, but then turned around and tried to prevent others from making the same mistakes. That's pretty powerful.
It is, right? And it makes you question that whole once a criminal, always a criminal idea.
It definitely challenges that stereotype. But what about Curcio himself? What did he do to stay on the right track after getting out?
Well, from what we know, he kind of combined personal growth with community support. He kept writing and speaking about his experience, which probably helped him process everything.
Like a form of therapy, almost.
Yeah, and a way to hold himself accountable, too. Plus, he surrounded himself with supportive people, mentors, advocates, family, people who believed in him and his potential to change.
So he had that support system, but it also sounds like he was really putting in the effort himself. It wasn't just people handing him a second chance. He was actively working for it.
That's a good point. And that might be part of why his story resonated with people. He wasn't just asking for forgiveness. He was demonstrating real change through his actions.
It's a pretty compelling story. But let's face it, not every ex-con gets that kind of reception. What do you think made Curcio different? Why did society embrace him after what he did?
That's a tough question. There are probably a few reasons. First, his crime, while elaborate, it wasn't violent. He didn't hurt anyone physically. That probably made it easier for some to forgive him.
True. People are more likely to support someone who didn't cause direct harm, even if they broke the law.
Right. And he was also open about what he did, took responsibility, seemed truly remorseful. People tend to be more forgiving when someone shows genuine regret.
It's like they see the potential for change, not just the crime itself.
Exactly. And then there's the fact that he used his story to help others, turned his negative experience into a positive force, advocating for second chances. It all comes back to actions speaking louder than words.
So, in a way, Curcio's story is about so much more than the heist itself. It's about the possibility of redemption, the human capacity for change, and maybe even a bit about the complexities of our criminal justice system.
It definitely raises questions about how we approach punishment and rehabilitation.
Like, what is the purpose of prison? Is it just about punishment, or is it about giving people the opportunity to change and reintegrate into society?
Exactly. And it makes you think, what if there had been intervention earlier in Curcio's life? Could his gambling addiction have been addressed before it led to all of this?
That's a good question. What if he'd had access to resources as a support system that recognized the warning signs? Maybe things could have been different.
It highlights the importance of early intervention, accessible mental health services. Those things can make a huge difference. But let's shift gears a bit. We focused a lot on Curcio, his motivations, his journey. But let's go back to the heist itself. Were there any security flaws or vulnerabilities that he exploited?
That's a good point. We've been praising his ingenuity, but there must have been some weaknesses he capitalized on, right?
Right, like maybe the Brinks truck's route was too predictable or the security presence wasn't strong enough. It's possible the whole incident forced them to reevaluate their protocols.
So in a weird way, Curcio might have actually contributed to improving security systems.
It's possible, yeah. A real-life case of it takes a thief to catch a thief. Security professionals can learn a lot from cases like this. They have to think outside the box, anticipate those unconventional tactics.
Okay, I want to unpack that a bit more. What kind of measures could have deterred a crime like this? What are the bigger lessons learned?
Well, thinking about it, maybe the truck's route was too predictable or they didn't have enough security guards.
Makes sense. They were probably relying on the element of surprise. You don't expect a bunch of guys in work clothes to rob a Brinks truck.
Exactly. And I bet that whole incident forced them to take a hard look at their security protocols,
Yeah, like how do you even plan for that? It's not your typical robbery scenario.
It's a good lesson for security professionals everywhere, really. Got to think outside the box, anticipate the unexpected. You can't just rely on the standard playbook.
Definitely. And it also makes you think about how technology plays into all of this.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Technology, it's a tool, right? Can be used for good or bad.
So like a double-edged sword.
Exactly. Think about it. Curcio used Craigslist to pull off his heist, but technology probably helped the investigation too.
True. Surveillance cameras, cell phone records, all those things could have helped the police track him down.
It's a constant back and forth, right? Criminals using technology for their schemes, law enforcement using it to catch them.
Like a never-ending technological arms race.
You got it. That's why it's so important to stay ahead of the curve. Update security measures, investigative techniques, always got to be adapting.
So we've covered a lot of ground here, from the crazy heist to Curcio's personal journey to these bigger questions about security and the criminal justice system. What would you say are the key takeaways for our listeners?
Well, first, I'd say that even the most elaborate plan can fall apart because of a small detail.
Right, like that homeless man who saw Curcio before the robbery. Sometimes the most unexpected things can make all the difference.
It shows you how important it is to be observant, pay attention to your surroundings. You never know what you might notice. And it's a good reminder that we should always be thinking critically, questioning what we see and hear.
Totally. Don't just accept things at face value. Do your own digging. And then there's that whole redemption arc, right? Curcio's story shows that change is possible. Second chances can lead to amazing things.
Absolutely. It's a good reminder not to judge people solely on their past mistakes. People can change, and we should be open to that.
Definitely gives you a lot to think about. And maybe a little extra caution when browsing job postings on Craigslist, right?
Yeah, probably a good idea. You never know what kind of schemes might be out there.
Well, on that note, I think we'll wrap things up here. This case, it's got it all. Audacity, redemption, important lessons. Thanks for diving deep with us today. And for our listeners, if you enjoyed this deep dive, be sure to subscribe for more explorations into the world of true crime and beyond. We'll catch you next time.